I was expecting a little small room with about 5 people, so yeah. So I've got my notes here. At the top of the notes it says panic. I've crossed out that and put don't panic. So there we go, we're off to a good start. So, my name is Paul Grogan. Some of you will know me from creating videos online of how to play games. Some of you may have seen my name in the back of rulebooks as I write and edit rulebooks. I also work at various events around the UK doing demos, so I'm currently demoing for Czech Games Edition in the main hall. Aside from that, I also do game development and game design in the background. So basically, I work full-time in the board games industry. I have done for a few years now, but before I worked full-time in the games industry, I've been a gamer since like 1983, and gaming is my entire life. From the moment I wake up, well, in fact, before I wake up, I'm probably dreaming about games. So yeah, I'm fully immersed in the board gaming hobby. And this seminar is about teaching games. There are so many different ways to teach games. Everybody has their own style. So whilst I'm going to cover today some key points, I'm also going to cover some specific points which you may not agree with. You will develop your own style of teaching that suits you. You may not follow some of the things in here. And also, you might not have a group where some of the things that I talk about here are suitable. So every teach of a game will be slightly different based on you and the group that you're teaching. But hopefully, some of the things I'll cover today will cover some wider concepts. I'm also going to be covering later on a fairly different style of teaching which I actually came up with myself a few years ago, and I've been using now for, yeah, the first year it was a bit of a mess and it didn't really work properly because it took a little time to get used to. I've been perfecting it over the last sort of 3 years. It is kind of a little bit different from normal, but it has worked really well, so much so that a couple of large publishers have now adopted that demo style as their official demo style that they use across all events. So I'm quite pleased about that. I'll be covering that later on as well. Now, enough about me. So, teaching the group. Yes, be aware of the people that you're teaching. You may be teaching people that you know. You may be teaching absolute complete strangers who sit down at a table if you're running demos at a convention. The group that you're teaching could be a variety of those people, and your approach might be different depending on the group. And also, if it's people you know, you're probably aware that some of them might have peculiarities, shall we say, and you might need to do specific things. Yes, Rob, I've told you that 4 times in the last 10 minutes, but I'm going to tell you it now a 5th time. For example, okay? They are things that you might have to do for specific people in your group. Different people learn in different ways. You've probably heard this before. I actually conducted a scientific study, the University of Columpton, which doesn't exist. The 3 main ways that people learn, a lot of people learn by reading, and they learn by reading best. Some people learn by watching best. Ironically enough, I can't learn rules by watching videos. Go figure that. But most people, and this scientific study has shown that it's 97.3% of people, learn by doing. Actually doing the thing is the best way of learning how to do something. And that's what we're going to be talking about today, because the type of teaching I'm going to be talking about today is sitting at a table with somebody, going through the rules, and them actually going through the process. And that way, by the end of the game, they will hopefully know how to play, if they were listening. So yeah, we're going to be covering the teaching by doing, but even within that, there are a few different ways of teaching. Now, one of the ways of teaching is you give every single rule of the game up front, which a lot of people are used to, and a lot of people think that that is the only way that you can teach, and it's not, but sometimes that's the right way. Sometimes. And when I say every single rule up front, I don't mean every single rule. If a game has like 20 different cards in it, each of which with icons with special abilities, you don't need to explain every single card and every single ability during the rules teach. Some people do. I heard a story this week about somebody who was taught how to play Magic Realm. For those of you who don't know, it's a game from the 80s with it's almost impossible to play. The teach took 6 hours. They then spent 2 hours playing, packed it up and went home. Okay? it is possible that you could spend 6 hours teaching somebody how to play a game if you really wanted to go through all of the details. You could do that. That's absolutely fine if that's what you want to do and if that's what the group wants you to do. So some people want all of the rules up front, and the reasons that I've heard for people who want all of the rules up front is they want to be competitive from game one. I argue against that in that if I was to sit down and teach you how to play Through the Ages, for example, that would be a 1 hour teach or a 1.25 hour teach. If I was to teach you all of the rules of that game right now before anybody moves a piece, it would be 1 hour to 1 hour and 15 minutes. And I would be going through rules in the game which are not going to happen for 5 hours. And then 5 hours later, you've got to remember what I said. Well, that works for a very few people. And even the people that it works for, who are able to listen to 1 hour or 1 hour and 1/4 of rules and take everything in, the number of people that can then process all of that information and turn it into a winning strategy on game one, that person there and Isaac Childress are the only two people I know who can actually do that. Most people, even if you know all of the rules of a game, your first game is, I don't actually know how this is going to work out. I'll do all of these things, but I'm not going to know whether they're going to work or not. But if you're able to analyze all of the rules after 1 hour and work out the best way of doing things, brilliant. I'll never play a game with you. So I've heard that. We want to be competitive from game one, and I appreciate that. It's very uncomfortable when you're playing a game when you're like, oh, well, I want to place this worker here, but I don't actually know what it's going to do. And you've not explained the rules to me yet. So unless you explain to me the rules of all 64 different action spaces, or is it 63 in Feast for Odin? 63, I think. If you don't explain all 63 different spaces, then you're making me place a worker somewhere without knowing what it does. Well, that's not fair on me. So I can totally understand why people want to know all of the rules up front. Let's go into this in a bit more detail. Let's say that you're going to do the all the rules up front approach, and let's cover how you do that, if that's what you choose to do. So I have a structure which I follow, and if you go online, you will find lots of different ideas that people have got. You will find that different people have different structures, but I've tried to strip it down into the most common ones that I've found, which is you start with the setting. Now, notice I've said setting instead of theme. I have a whole extra topic of the difference between theme and setting, which I won't go into here. So, you explain the setting of the game. You're all cowboys in 1950s America. Brilliant. And you're all rustling cows. Whatever. Right. Set the scene. Then tell people what it is that they're actually trying to do. So the objective of the game is that you're trying to collect a good set of cows, and then you're going to sell the cows in Kansas to get some money. Right. Okay. So we're all cowboys and we're collecting cows. Right. I now know what it is we're doing. The game will last for 5 rounds or 3 ages or whatever. Give a very, very high-level approach of how long the game's going to be, and then tell people how to win. And in most of the threads which I've been asking for help on how to teach rules, so many people have said explain how to win early on. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to tell people what the objective is and tell people that at the start. The one with the most money wins. The one with the most victory points wins. Great Western Trail, which I'm talking about for those who don't know the cowboy cow reference. I get the score pad out for Great Western Trail and I say, look, some of this isn't going to make any sense at the moment, but I'm actually going to go through the score pad and show you the different ways that you can get points so that you are aware right from the start of, right, here's all the different ways you can get points. And then I'll come back to it later on. But be clear about how a player wins the game at the start of the game. What's next? Setting how you win. Right, then a high-level structure. I then go into a high-level structure. So, explain in a bit more detail, right, the game is going to last for 10 rounds or whatever, or the game's going to last until this counter gets here. You know, explain very, very high level as to the structure of the game. If it's divided into phases, explain that. Then remind people how you win again, because you've kind of mentioned the end of the game, so remind people how the game ends, and then you start going into the detail. So as long as you start with that, everything else beneath that is optional. And I could spend days talking about how you do the rest of it. One of the topics that cropped up in conversation was and I'll come back to that later, And for those people who've watched a lot of my videos, you'll know that I say this a lot. So much so that 2 friends of mine have actually got it as their ringtone on their phone, is me saying, and I'll come back to that later on. And it doesn't work for some people. Some people find it really annoying. So if you watch my videos and you get really annoyed every time I say that, then I will apologize, but I'm still going to do it. And the reason I'm going to do it is I believe that when explaining the rules of a game, good structure is very, very important. And if we look at Tzolk'in, for example, and I'm in the middle of explaining how the different buildings work in Tzolk'in, I'll point to the farm and I'll say, right, this is a farm. This is going to feed your workers when it comes to feeding day. I'll explain feeding day in a minute. I am not, in the middle of an explanation of the buildings, I'm not going to break off and spend 5 minutes explaining how the feeding day works. No, I'm going to leave the explanation of the feeding day until the point where I feel it needs explaining. I'll finish the explanation of the buildings, and then I'll come back to the feeding day. So feel free to park certain ideas and leave them later, especially if you've got a particular structure that you want to stick to. This is all assuming that you know the game, because of course, most of what I'm saying now assumes you actually know the game yourself very, very well. I'm not covering the teaching somebody how to play a game when you've only played it once. No, this is designed for you know the game well enough and you've actually got time to come up with a structure of how you would teach it. So yeah, feel free to break off. You normally will get players who go, what does that icon do there? And you've got to be very careful about those players, because some people don't like it when you say, I'll tell you about that later. They want to know right now and then, what does that red number there mean? But if that's going to interrupt your structure, then it can actually cause more damage than good, especially if you then go off for 5 minutes and explain that. So try to keep to your structure, but also try to cater for the people who really do want to know, what does that red number there mean? Look, I will explain that very soon. Even if you have a fixed structure, possibly even swap your structure around. Say, oh, right, he's really annoying me now because he keeps asking what that icon means. Okay, I'll cover what that icon means. Yeah. Okay. Right. Is that better? Can you still hear me? Oh, right. Okay. I didn't know. So for anybody watching this back on video, apologies for all of the sound qualities. So structure. Structure is very, very important. And as I mentioned at the start, you don't need to explain absolutely everything at the start. You don't need to explain every icon on every tile. For example, I was talking to Graham about brass, explaining the intricacies of certain things in brass. If you don't have enough money if your income is negative and you don't have enough money in brass, that's bad. And we can spend 5 minutes explaining what actually happens, or you can just say, that's really bad. Try and avoid it. And then when it happens, then you can explain it in more detail. You could do that, because explaining it in the detail that it requires is possibly a bit too much. I was playing Teotihuacan. See, I can't pronounce. I can say this fine when I'm at home. Teotihuacan, right? So I was teaching that game the other day. There is an area on the board that you can go to, and there are 3 particular things that you can do there, and those 3 things change from one game to the next. So I just said, look, if you go there, you can do one of those 3 things. The first time somebody goes there, I'll then explain what those 3 things do. Okay? But one very important thing when I'm teaching games is I allow takebacks, especially if I'm not teaching all of the rules up front. So even if it's a game where I'm teaching most of the rules up front, but I'm leaving those 3 tiles, and you decide, all right, I'm going to go to that location. Now explain what those 3 tiles do. I'll explain what those 3 tiles do. If you then say, oh, well, they're all rubbish. I wouldn't have gone there if I'd have known that. Okay, take it back. It's not a problem. Now, there are some groups that I've been a part of that absolutely disallow takebacks. Completely. It's against their group rules. And I understand why. Because it can completely slow a game down if somebody's constantly taking back their moves. But in your first game, not allowing takebacks actually just puts so much extra pressure on people that they end up spending longer thinking about their move because they're worried about making the wrong move. So I always allow takebacks, within reason. You know, if somebody's doing it 20 times a minute, then maybe not. Also, when you're teaching, if you're doing the almost every rule up front, give examples. Don't just sit there and talk to people. Actually physically say, look, if I move this piece from here to here, then it says there £4, that means I need to pay you £4, and actually physically move the bits around. I had a few people that suggested that you should actually play through a complete round or a complete turn first, and then reset. And I originally thought, nah, I don't do that. But actually, when I was demoing Clans of Caledonia at Essen last year, what we did is in Clans of Caledonia, there are, on your turn, you can do one of 8 different actions. Action 8 is pass, so we'll forget that one. What I did is I got player 1 to do action number 1. So I didn't explain any of the actions at all. I just said, here's the different actions you can do. You're player 1, so we're going to get you through to go through action 1. Here's what action 1 is. Here's how it works. We physically moved the bits on the board and we went through it. Player 2, right, I want you to do action number 2. And we did it, and we went through it, and we explained how action 2 worked. And we got all the way to action 7, and we were like, right, so everybody now knows what all of the different actions are and how they all work. Reset, play the game. That actually probably took less time to do that, because I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, surely you've just wasted time. Surely you're now going to have to undo everything, reset, and go back. You've just wasted 15 minutes. It would have taken me 15 minutes to actually explain all of those rules to you anyway. So we've not wasted any time. We've now gone through the rules, but you've actually seen them actually happening. So maybe look at doing that. The other thing is to be patient. Going back to what I said at the start, different people learn in different ways. Some people are better at picking things up earlier. Some people are going to have difficulty picking up certain aspects of the game. So you do have to be patient. And just be aware that every time you teach a game, you will get better. I'm going to sound really arrogant here. I would say that my demo teaching that I do of Pulsar 2849 is absolutely amazing. I've done it about 70 times. My first one was not absolutely amazing, okay? So I apologize if anybody in the room saw my first ever demo of Pulsar 2849, but every single time I've demoed that game, well, the first 20 at least, I got better and better and better. And now I'm so comfortable with that game. So you will get better, you will learn additional things along the way. Right, that's the end of sheet 2, which I almost lost. Any questions about the all the rules up front, brackets, not really all of the rules up front method? Yes? Hang on, you'll need the microphone.
Well, we'll say I need the microphone. Don't you think that that's very dependent on the design of the game? And that I would say if a game itself, I think there's some, no examples spring to mind, but a general style, a very old school style of pseudo war game from like the 1980s, and like every piece is different. Some early Games Workshop products, for example, Orc Marauders or something, where every single card was different and had its own rules explanation in the rules. Which I would say is quite a naive and not very good style of game design, as opposed to like there's a lot of card games, for example, where you just go draw 1, pick up 1. You've got a hand of 5. You have to decrease. You have to like decrease to a hand of 5 at the end, and all the cards say what they do on them. You can that's the whole rules to the game.
Yep.
And so, would you not say that strategy is very dependent on the design of the game itself, rather than as a general teaching strategy?
Absolutely. I mean, every game will have a different approach to teaching depending on the game, depending on the style of the game, but also, as you say, if it's got 50 different cards and every card is different and every card needs explanation, then, yeah, how far do you go? Do you explain every single card up front? It's like going back to the actions in Feast for Odin. I do not go through every single action in Feast for Odin at the start of the game. I go through a few of them, and then I say, right, and hopefully now you understand how the iconography works. If you want to know what any of them do, just ask. And if people want me to go through some extra ones before we start, then that's fine. So yeah, it really does depend on the style of the game. But the overall approach is, and I wrote this down in big letters and then didn't see it because I can't see straight, but it's start big and go small. I'll never forget one of my friends who is absolutely awful at teaching games. His words, not mine. And we sat down to play this game. His first words were, right, there's 4 different actions that you can do in this game. Action 1, what? Have absolutely no idea what the game is, what we're trying to do, or anything. But I now know there's 4 actions I can do on my turn. The other thing that was mentioned is some people are better at teaching games than others. if you are not good at teaching games, don't put yourself under that pressure. Obviously, if there's nobody else available for teaching games and it's fallen to you, then it falls to you. But if there are people in your group who are better at teaching games, then let them. Also, try not to be too nervous. You are going to make mistakes. So I'm going to sound big-headed and arrogant. I'm regarded as one of these amazing demo people, and he always gets all the rules right, and his demos are fantastic. And I was demoing a game of Escape Plan at Gen Con earlier this year, and I forgot to tell them a very, very key rule right at the end of the game, that if you don't have enough money, you actually can't escape and you lose the game. And I forgot to tell them that until the start of the last round of the game. So how did I recover from that absolute embarrassing mistake? Well, I laughed it off, and I basically said, look, if that would have impacted anybody's game, I'm just going to give you all an extra $10 now, which is enough money to escape, and I'm really sorry. I'm not going to say, oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you this absolute key rule, and you're now out of the game. No, right, I'll recover from my mistake, and I'll basically say, look, everybody have $10, right, you can all now escape, but the next time you play, and then I did the demo the next day, and I sat them down and I said, right, before I even explain the theme of this game, I'm going to tell you one thing. And I told them that rule right at the start, and I said, right, I'm now not going to forget. So yeah, I kind of tried to make a joke of it, but it was very embarrassing. I'll learn from it, and hopefully I'll never make that mistake again. Right. My method. So this is officially the Gaming Rules Interactive Drip Feed Method of Teaching by Paul Grogan, patent pending. It's a little long. I'm looking for a shortened version of it. And this demo style, I started doing, I think it's about 4 years ago now. And the reason I started doing it is, I was coming away from Essen every year, and I was reading a number of forum threads on BGG about the worst demo I had. And there was a few of these, and every year I read them, and I was like, right, well, my way of learning is by my mistakes and other people's mistakes. So reading all of these forums about why the demo that this person had was the worst demo ever, and going, right, never do that, and making all of these mental notes about things not to do in order to try and improve my demo style. And the more and more I was reading it, I thought, and I came up with this idea of basically get people playing the game as early as possible, and sometimes not explain anything. I was like, that's a crazy idea, that's never going to work. And I spent a year messing around and making all kinds of mistakes until I got it, as I mentioned at the start, I've now got it fairly well established. And some publishers, Czech Games Edition, for example, if you go to Gen Con or Essen and get a demo from anybody at CGE, and at Gen Con their demo team was 50 people, they were all using my demo style. Because they'd seen it in operation, and they'd seen it work, and they'd seen how much of a success it was. And basically it is, tell them very, very little at the start. Now this style was specifically designed for conventions. And I made a point 3 years ago saying, do not use this style at home with your friends. That's not what it's designed for. It's designed purely for teaching people at a convention, where it's a busy convention. People do not have the time or the capacity to listen to 45 minutes of rules of a game where they may only want to just play a few rounds to see what it's like. You need to get them playing as soon as possible so that they play and they get a feel for it. Okay, that was what the style was designed for. Saying that, over the last couple of years, I've adapted it so that actually I have used this method with my gaming group on a normal games night, but only if they are okay with it. If none of them are okay with it, we do all of the rules up front. Okay? Because I don't want to insist on doing it if somebody doesn't want to do it. The downside of this system is that if you ever try this method yourself, you are going to get pushback. And I got a lot of pushback from a lot of people at the start. Oh, no. That's not going to work for me. I need to know all the rules up front. The number of times I have heard that is, I've heard it a lot. But when I was at a convention, I said, well, I'm very sorry, but that's the style that we're using here. try it out and see if it's okay. And I had the safety net of the fact that it wasn't me insisting on this, it's actually the publisher that's insisting on using this style, whereas actually it was me, but I was kind of saying it wasn't me. And we kind of forced that style on them. Now, we had pushback on it in Germany and in America, so it wasn't a countrywide thing. I've had pushback on it in the UK as well. But every time I said, look, just try it. Please just try it and see. Every single one, and I'm not saying this now to make it sound like, my method works and I'm trying to convince you. Every single one of them, at the end, came up to me and said, I did not think that was going to work, but it did. There was one guy in particular who was starting to get quite angry with me when I was demoing Sulking to him in America. And I was like, look, we're going to start playing this game within the next 2 minutes and we're going to learn as we go. It's a learning game, we're not even going to play the whole game. And he was like, yeah, I know that, I know we're not going to play the whole game. This is just a demo to see whether you're going to like the game or not. And he accepted that. And he said, but I need to know every single rule before we start playing. And I said, well, I'm sorry, that's going to take 30 minutes. We're just going to... And he was like, oh, no, I can't. And he was actually getting quite angry about it. And in the end, he accepted that the demo was going to be run that way or not at all, because the other 3 people were absolutely fine with it. And he sat there, and he was grumbling a bit at the start, and he was like, what, you want me to put a worker on a space, and you're not going to tell me what it does? And I was like, no, just put it down. So, well, we'll see what happens. It's a learning game. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. At the end of it, he came up to me and he said, that is the best demo of a game that I've ever had, ever. And, yeah, that was good. That made me feel good. And he's now going to adopt that method and use that for his own group. It's like, we couldn't have wished for a better... and that's the most extreme example. Most people haven't thrown chairs at me, but some people have been visibly, oh God, you're not going to tell me all of the rules up front? Oh no, just try it, be fine. If you don't think this method works for you, I challenge you to try it. Please come and find me at a convention and we can try it. If it doesn't work for you, I'm not going to force and say it will work for you. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine. But what I'm getting across here is it works for more people than you think. And even the people that are resistant to it, if you show them how it works, it's fine. But, caveat, some friends of mine like this method and appreciate this method and think it's fantastic, and have tried using it and absolutely crashed and burned. And the game collapsed and people walked away. So I was like, oh, and that made me feel bad, because it's my method, it's my idea. They tried it and it really did not go down well. It takes practice. It takes you to not only know the rules of the game, but also to know which bits you need to explain when you need to explain them. I refer back to my embarrassing mistake in Escape Plan. But there are certain key rules. Now bear in mind, when I'm demoing games, I'm generally not playing them at the same time. I'm somebody who likes teaching people how to play games almost as much, if not more, than actually playing them myself. So if we sit down and I'm going to teach you how to play a game, and I'm not joining in on that game, that is a different feeling to if I'm playing the game as well. You know I know how to play, and I'm deliberately not telling you certain things. That is unfair if I use those things to my advantage, right? But generally speaking, I'm facilitating the game, or I'm not actually playing in the game myself. And that way, the drip feed method works perfectly fine. So yeah, it can go wrong. If you do it wrong, it can backfire. It's better if you're not playing in the game. But it can also be quite fun. So the game Adrenaline, for example, for those people who don't know, it's a first-person shooter-style game from CGE. And I use my method for that game. And the game has multiple weapons in the game. And like you were saying, every single weapon has got its own rules. Right? Every single weapon is different and works in a different way. And I don't explain any of the weapons at all at the start of the game. So your first move will generally be pick up a weapon. You have a choice of 3. And you're looking at them, and you're going, well, I have no idea. And I'm like, remind you, it's a learning game. The objective of this is for us to all just have fun. We're learning by doing. Just pick up whatever you want. And then somebody comes to actually use the weapon. And there's one weapon in particular where it does a certain effect, and then if you spend a red cube, it does something else. So we skip forward 2 turns, the player's picked up the weapon, they've got it in their hand, and they say, right, I'm going to use this weapon, what does this bit do? And I'm like, I don't know. And they look at me, and I'm like, it's an experimental weapon. They only gave it to me yesterday, I have no idea what it does. It's got a red button on it, do you want to press the red button? And he's looking at me thinking, well, you're teaching us the game, surely you know how to play. And I'm like, well, yeah, I know how to play, but and eventually it clicks in the group that we're just having fun here. So the other players start going, go on, press the red button, go on, do it. He's like, oh, I don't know, should I do it, should I not? Go on, press the red button. So he presses the red button, and then something cool happens, and he goes, oh, right, that was really cool. And it was fun, and it worked, and it really helped the demo go along. What people didn't realise is what's going on in here. Right, I know Adrenaline like the back of my hand. I was one of the development team for the game. I've demoed it like, I don't know, 100 times, something crazy, right? I know that game like the back of my hand. I knew exactly what that red button was going to do. And I knew it was going to be good for him. So I was encouraging him to do it. So that when he did do it, something good would happen and he'll feel good about it. There is no way that I would have said, oh, it's got a red button, do you want to press it? Knowing that it wasn't going to do anything, or it was actually going to have a negative effect. So all of the time, the work that's going on in the back of my mind as I'm doing this demo is actually more than you might think. I'm not just making comments up randomly to try and have a bit of fun. I'm actually trying to help the situation, be a bit more fun for everybody. But I've been known to do that. I've also been known, certainly in my demos of Through the Ages, which for those people who don't know, well, I mentioned at the start, if I was to teach you how to play Through the Ages now, it would be a 1-hour explanation. I can get you playing Through the Ages within 30 seconds. Right, this is a Civilization-style game. The one with the most culture wins. You're going first, pick one of those 5 cards. There you go. That's how I start Through the Ages. But the demo of Through the Ages, which is an 8-hour game if you play it, the first time you play it, right, a demo is normally about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So you know you're not going to play a full game. You know you're just going to do stuff and experience and find out what the game's about. Some of what happens in Through the Ages is card-driven with cards that are in players' hands. So while the demo's going on, I will be swapping out cards from your hand. Or I'll be deliberately, in view of all players, rearranging the cards on the top of the deck. And people see it, and it's a source of fun. People like it and whatever. And what I'm doing is I'm actually going, right, well, you've got 3 swordsmen, you've built up your legion, you've got a military strength high, right, so I'm going to make sure you've got, right, okay, there you go. And then it's, oh, it's your turn. Do you have an aggression card in your hand? Oh, I don't know. Do I have an aggression? Oh, yes, I do. Right. So what I'm doing is I'm facilitating the game to try and make sure that as much of the game as possible is seen within that demo time, whilst also making it fun for the players that are there by deliberately swapping cards from people's hands. Bearing in mind this is not a full game of Through the Ages. Okay? We normally only play through the first age. But I have done that method in a game of Through the Ages, and then they've gone on to play the rest of the game. So this is the other thing. Going back to what I said at the start, your first game's a learning game, and we're not necessarily going to play the whole game. We say that at the start. We do a demo of Pulsar 2849. This demo is going to last for 3 rounds. Okay, by 3 rounds in, you will know how to play the game. And for those 3 rounds, I am going to be facilitating the game, I'm going to be helping you out, I might even be suggesting actions to you if you want help. If I've spotted a really cool move, do you mind if I point out what that cool move is? So by the end of 3 rounds, you might feel that the game has been half played for you. You weren't the one making those decisions, because I was kind of hinting, encouraging, whatever. But then most people then go on to play the rest of the game. And by the end of the game, they do feel that they played a game, even though the start of it, they weren't really playing because they didn't know what to do. Anyway, I could talk for hours about this method. If you want to speak to me in any more detail about it, you're welcome to come and grab me. I've actually written a number of papers on it for specific games, because every game is slightly different about how you do it. I'm just checking the time. We've got plenty of time. Is there any questions about this method now? And then as the questions come in, I'll see if I've forgotten anything.
why did you say you wouldn't necessarily recommend this for teaching it to your friends or family, particularly if those friends or family are not sort of hardcore gamers?
I think that was my safety net for me not wanting to force it on people originally. And because a number of my friends don't like the idea of not knowing everything up front. And as I say, 4 years ago when I had the idea, and then 3 years ago where I actively started using it at conventions, I was deliberately saying, do not use this for your gaming group. But then over time, I've realised that, so if you came around to my house and you wanted to learn how to play through the ages, I would absolutely use this method. No question whatsoever, because I believe it's the best way of learning that particular game. If you came around to my house and wanted to play brass, I've never taught brass. Well, I've just finished the rules video, so effectively I have, but I've never taught anybody how to play brass in person. So if you wanted me to use that method for brass, I'd have to say no, because I actually don't know how to use that method for brass. So if I did know how to use the method for brass, then I'd leave it up to you. I'd say, look, we can start playing now, and I'll explain the key concepts, and then the rest as we go along. Or I can tell you everything now up front, and we'll see how we go. If your group is up for it, and you know the game well enough to do it, then try it. Try it, see what you think. As I say, a lot of as long as you set the thing first and say, like, it's a learning game. It's the first game. This is going to be a learning game. Just do stuff. If you do something and it's completely wrong, you know, oh, I'm going to go there. Oh, right, well, that means this, this, and this. Oh, well, if I'd known that, I wouldn't have done it. Well, don't do it then. Take back. Right, but now you know what that space does. So allow the take-backs. What I also do is I also say, look, I know this game really, really well. I'm going to make sure you don't do anything crazy stupid. Right? I'm not going to tell you any strategy, but I'm going to be there as a safety net. So, for example, the turn before the feeding phase, and you decide to spend all your food on buying that diamond, I'll be like, oh, don't forget, the feeding phase is coming up and you're going to need 8 food. Oh, right, yeah. I'll undo that move. So always allow people the flexibility to... Basically, what I don't want is I don't want anybody to have bad feelings for making a mistake that causes them a problem in the game, and they made that mistake because you hadn't explained something, or they hadn't understood something. So, okay, next question.
So this, if you were pitching to a publisher and you had 5-10 minutes, say, to explain the game to them, would this method work for that? And if not, how would you adapt it to make it work?
Pitching to a publisher is a completely different thing. I hadn't considered this as a pitch because I have pitched to publishers before. I've also done a couple of podcasts where I talk to publishers and game designers about how to pitch. So it's interesting. Most publishers I know don't want to play. They want the 30-second elevator pitch, and then they want a few minutes of extra explanation. There is one publisher I know that spoke to me afterwards and said, this guy came and he refused to give any kind of pitch, and he insisted we just play the game. And so that's bad. So yeah, don't go into a publisher and say, look, let's just start playing and you'll pick it up. No. If the publisher wants the elevator pitch first, you've got to give them that. So, yeah.
Hi, 2 questions. First one's just really a yes/no question. When you've explained your demoing style to somebody and you're about to demo to them at a convention, say, have you ever had anybody just go, that's not for me, and just walk away at that point?
Never.
Okay.
That's my honest answer. And bearing in mind, I now train the entire CGE demo team at Gen Con, and they did this. So that's 40 people for 4 days solid doing it, and nobody at any point ever said, no, I'm sorry, and walk off.
Interesting. Second question, to me, a bit of context. To me, the way you're explaining everything sounds, the whole style sounds to me like it's very applicable to being a GMing style in a role-playing context. Neutrality, helping out the player, this kind of thing. In that context, with your red button example, if the pressing the red button would have had a negative consequence for the player, how would you have handled that?
In that particular case, so if pressing that red button, for example, would have done 2 damage to them and then 3 damage to somebody in the same room, but there was nobody in the same room. In other words, it would have done 2 damage to them. Depending on the situation, I might say that red button's not going to be good for you right now. Let's finish this action and then I'll explain what it does to you. Or if it was simple, I might explain it right then. Oh, and I can't hear you, sorry.
So you wouldn't have made that explanation in a dramatic context, like you would for a positive consequence. Because when you said when it had a positive consequence, you made it like a drama.
Yeah.
But in a negative context, if it had a negative consequence, you just basically say, don't do it now or don't do it at all.
As I said, by this point, hopefully I would have read the group and read that player. So if he says, oh, what does this red button do? It would be either, right, that red button is going to do 2 damage to you, but then 3 damage to somebody in the same room. Oh, right, so that's not... Or I'll say, or, as I say, if the player is going along with this, I don't need to know everything, I'd say, that's not going to be good for you right now. Don't do it. And then when it was the next player's turn, while the next player was taking their turn, I might sit with that player and explain what it did quickly. So, yeah.
So you've explained quite clearly that you need to know the game yourself. Imagine a scenario where you've seen a review or you've got a sense that the game's a good one to have and you buy it. What is the best technique for learning a game yourself, perhaps without other people to play it with? You've never played it before, straight out of the box. You want to have that really successful first encounter with your family or a group. What's the best way of opening it up and really getting to the heart of it quickly?
Yeah, so I hadn't prepped for that, but I've had this discussion a lot with many, many people. And when I asked on the UK Facebook group what your top tips for teaching games, a lot of people actually came back and answered that question. Even though that wasn't the question, they answered with how they learn. And again, different people learn in different ways. So a lot of people said that, first of all, they get the game and they read through the rule book. Right. Some people say we don't read the rule book, we go and see if there's a video. But then, of course, you need to check who did the video. Because as we all know, there are some rules videos out there with errors in them. So you've got to be very careful if you're learning a game from a rules video, that you need to make sure that that rules video is absolutely authentic or turn Klingon subtitles on. A lot of people have said that they set up the game themselves at home and they multi-handed play through a few rounds. That seems to be a method that works for a lot of people. For me, I don't do that. I think if I had the time, I probably would. But my time at the moment has been very limited. So when we learn how to play, the last 2 or 3 games that we've learned how to play in my group, the game's arrived, I've gone, ooh, I want to play this. I have no idea how to play it. Is everybody okay with us all learning this game together from the rule book? Yeah, and off we go. Now that, a lot of people have said, oh no, you as the game teacher, you should have prepped, you should have watched the videos, you should have read the rules. And I'm like, yeah, I'd have loved to have done, but I didn't have time. So for me, I'm all into this shared experience. We're all going to learn this together. And thankfully my group are totally okay with that, and we've done that. Yeah, because I like doing things as a group, I like doing things, and why should I be the one to have to do all of that? But if you are the one doing it, then yes, playing multi-handed through a few rounds is good. But use all of the resources available to you, depending on how much time you've got. I would recommend reading the rulebook, watching a video, reading the rulebook again, setting it up, playing through it, do whatever you can. Also, FAQ. If there are FAQs online, go and find some, because those questions are sure to crop up in your game. So print them out, have them with you before the game starts, because those questions are ones that have been asked by other people. So, okay? Question at the back.
Paul,
yes.
How do you think you can use this method for hidden traitor, hidden role type games like Dead of Winter, One Night Hospital Werewolf, those things where the hidden role aspect is what brings the game alive?
That's tricky. That is tricky. And again, if I'm not playing in the game myself, dead easy, right? But if I am playing in the game myself and there's a hidden role aspect, oh gosh. I mean, I dread the day when somebody asks me to teach them how to play Root. And I think I'm going to avoid playing that game just because somebody will eventually ask me. But Root is an asymmetrical game where there's 4 races and every race plays as if they're playing a completely different game. So effectively you have to explain a complete game to each player individually, and everything that you tell one player has no bearing on another player. Is that a fair assumption of that game? Yeah, I dread that. I can't possibly even think about that. It's interesting. I'm not sure what to do. I mean, if we're thinking something like Battlestar Galactica, for example, that's quite an easy one to do. You just have to explain, look, 2 of you are Cylons, and then you have to talk to the group as a whole and explain to the whole group what you would do in those situations. If it's a case of hidden cards in hand, I'm not sure. I mean, I've played a few CCG type games with somebody where I have been teaching them how to play and I have been playing in the game at the same time, and knowledge of cards in hand is a thing. But for the first game, it's a learning game. I'm like, look, these are the cards I've got in my... Let's just play an open hand. Let's just do that. I think the important thing is if the players are happy to accept that the first game's a learning game. And depending on, obviously, Battlestar Galactica you can't play with an open hand, kind of defeats the point. But certain games you could potentially play with an open hand. Hidden movement games are a bit tricky, because if you don't explain the hidden movement aspects... I remember playing a hidden movement game, I can't remember what it was. And we got to the end of the game, it turns out the guy who was playing the bad guy was getting the rules completely wrong. And the game, it was just a waste of time, and we spent 2 hours playing the game, and it was a void game because it was a complete waste of time. The person explaining the rules to them didn't explain them well enough, and then because you can't check with them during the game, they allowed him to continually get things wrong. So, tricky one. I'm happy to look into this in more detail. If you have a specific game, we can talk about it afterwards. Okay, any other questions? We have 10 minutes.
Hi, I run a kind of games club down in Cornwall, but I'm rubbish at explaining games. Is there a resource online for tried and trusted games, for example, Pandemic? Here's the intro, how to set it up, and then run from there?
So, I think the first thing to do was go to youtube.com/gaming-rules-vids, which is my YouTube channel. This might sound a silly thing. So, a lot of people, just touching on my videos for a minute, because I believe that my videos and Watch It Played and other people that are doing rules videos, they serve a dual purpose. You're going to sit and learn the game yourself before you teach me, right? So you're going to watch my video twice, and then you're going to play it yourself, and then when people arrive, you're going to teach them how to play. That's what normally happens. People go, oh yeah, the rules guy, the guy who's going to teach the rules, it's his job to learn how to play. So he's going to watch the video, and he's going to read the rule book, and then he's going to teach us, right? Or you get the game out, you put this on the table, and you press play. My videos will teach people how to play games in less time than it would have done to teach you in person. Also, I spend 2 to 3 days writing the script for my videos. I don't just read the rulebook out. I script the video in such a way that I believe is the best structured approach at teaching that game. Also, you can guarantee that the video is 100% accurate. If you watch it on your own, and then you have to teach other people and you get a couple of rules wrong, they're going to blame you. Whereas if you put my video on and everybody watches that video at the same time, it's accurate. And everybody's taking in that information at the same time. So if there is a video resource available, either mine or Rodney Smith's or other people, be careful, put that video on the laptop or whatever. I remember a games weekend I had at my house. One group downstairs wanted to play Aquasphere, nobody knew how to play. One group in the dining room wanted to play Nippon, nobody knew how to play. One group upstairs was playing Keeper, nobody knew how to play. So what we did is I taught the group upstairs how to play Keeper, whilst at the same time my video on how to play Nippon was being played downstairs, while at the same time Rodney Smith's video on how to play Aquasphere was being played in the front room. So thank you very much, Rodney, for coming around to my house and teaching people how to play games. But it was really weird because I went downstairs to make a coffee, and there was me on the laptop teaching people how to play a game. So use the facilities available to you. Unfortunately, with 6,500 games coming out a year, we can't cover everything. But yeah, you use that as an option. If the teaching resources are there available for you, make use of them. And people might say, oh, we don't want to watch a video, you teach us. And you're like, well, I could teach you, but actually, Paul's going to do it in half the time, and it's going to, it takes the pressure off you as well. So, okay.
So I work for an organization where we teach English to non-English native speakers through tabletop wargaming.
Okay.
So our objective essentially is for every single game to be a learning game. No matter how far you go, every single week is going to be a learning game.
Right.
The only real way we found of doing that is to strip the first game down to 3 rules, and then in the second game we add 2 more rules, and then we just keep adding more and more rules. Have you had any experience of anything like that? Is there anything kind of useful?
And I hadn't mentioned that, I hadn't written it down, but that's exactly what I do, depending on the game. But I don't introduce rules one game at a time. I will introduce rules. So Pictomania, for example. We will play the first round of Pictomania like this. Right, everybody okay with that? Right. That's not actually the full rules. That's just getting started. Right, round 2, we're going to use these rules. Right, everybody okay? Everybody still want to play? Yeah, right. Round 3, there's these rules as well, and actually, these are the full rules of the game now. So the next time you play, you will use all of these rules right from the start, but for this demo, we've actually introduced the rules as we go along. And going back to what I mentioned about Through the Ages earlier on, I've stacked the deck. Certain things are not going to happen. Pulsar 2849, I will stack the tiles a little bit because the rule about the bonus actions I don't want to explain on rounds 1 and 2. So I try to avoid explaining it by moving the tiles where that action is. Before the game's even started, I hide them in the middle of the board so there's less chance of them coming out so that I don't have to explain that rule until about the 3rd round of the game. So I kind of do that depending on the game, is leaving certain rules and bringing them in. The important thing is, I stress to people every time I do that, this is not how you're supposed to play the game, right? I've introduced these rules on round 3, but you are supposed to use these rules from round 1, right? You are not supposed to bring them in on round 3. I make sure that people know when they go away that they don't repeat exactly what they've done at the table. So that's cool. I'd love to talk to you more at some point about what you do.
Hi.
Hi.
You talked a lot about the situation where you know the game inside out and you're teaching a table full of people that have never played before.
Yeah.
What about the situation where there's 3 or 4 of you that play it every week, you all know it inside out, but then you've got a new player joining who's never played it before? Do you do anything differently in that situation?
Okay, so the first most important rule in that situation, 1 teacher. The 2 teacher thing just doesn't work. And I need to buy a new roll of duct tape because if one of my friends is teaching a game that I know how to play, I cannot help myself. I'm terrible at it. So send me out of the room. If you want to teach a game and I know it, send me out of the room because I will just be putting in. And I've got friends who do it as well, and I know they're trying to be helpful, but as a listener, it's not good. So 1 person does the teach, and the other 2 people go off and play a game of Keyforge or something while they're waiting. So that would be my first really important thing. However, what if that 1 person forgets something? So having other people at the table, as long as they don't try to help out by butting in, but if then the 1 person who's teaching does say something wrong, then yes, they can then butt in. But yeah, that would be my main thing. Yeah. Okay. 1 more. Last question. Yes, sir. And again, if anybody wants to speak to me about anything afterwards, I'll be in the Asmodee demo area doing demos.
Hopefully quick. What's your favourite game to teach and why?
Through the Ages. I think it's a fantastic game. I absolutely love the game. It's 11 years old. I've been playing it for 11 years, almost constantly. I love the fact that even now, 11 years on, I am introducing people to that game who still want to learn a game that is a massive, big, complex game that could take 8 hours for your first game. In an age where playtime is averagely coming down, people are still interested in playing a game like that. after I've demoed it to them, the amount of people that have said that was an amazing demo, thank you so very much. So it's basically just making me feel good about myself. I love the game. So I love demoing a game that I absolutely love. I love the way that I demo that game, and I love the way that people are absolutely open to the let's just learn it as we go and everything else. And I've had probably more success, personal gratification with demoing that game than any other game. I also think it's a little bit of a pride thing, and pride is a bad thing to have, but screw that. I can get you playing through the ages within 30 seconds, and that's kind of a thing. And I quite like the fact that I can do that, and people don't believe me, and then I sit down and show them, and they go, oh, yeah, that was quite cool. So, yeah, probably that one. Okay, right. Thanks very much for attending. As I say, come and find me. You can find me online if you want to talk to me about anything else. But thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for all the questions.